to take a break from Galatians, and we are going to because Galatians is a book about faith versus works, right? So we're going to talk about faith today, but more separate from Galatians and kind of aiming towards Christmas. And we'll talk about, kind of aim towards Christmas until the Christmas service. So faith. So in Bible study on Thursday nights, there I go, trying to open that again. Hands off. We have been studying Hebrews, and we got to the chapter on faith, Hebrews chapter 11, right? And it's this, it's a great chapter, and it's just story after story, or not even story, just reference of character after character after character in the Old Testament that had faith, that God considers to have faith. And if you've never read the chapter, you should read it, especially if you're familiar with the stories, because the characters that God puts in that chapter as people of faith are kind of ridiculous, really. Some of them are great. Some are, true Bible heroes. Other ones, however, you go, wow, how in the world do they make the list of God's people of faith? Samson, for one. Jephthah, for another one. Two judges. Really, it's Gideon, Samson, and Jephthah. And if you know anything about those characters, you got to wonder, what is faith? Or how simple is faith, really? Gideon, if you don't know the story of Gideon, God comes to Gideon, and he's totally afraid, and God's like, oh, hello, mighty warrior, and he's like, who are you talking to? I am the least of my family, my family's the least in Israel, and every single thing Gideon does his whole time, he literally doesn't have faith in God the whole time. God tells him to do something. He's like, if it's really you, I'm going to put this out and, have this be wet and the ground dry. And God does it. And then he's like, that's not good enough. Now I'm going to put it back out. Let that be dry and the ground wet. And so he just can never bring himself to actually hear God speak and do it. And then the story ends with Gideon takes the ephod, this thing where you can know the will of God in the Old Testament, and he makes it an idol, and the rest of the time Israel worships the ephod as an idol. And Gideon did that. And he makes the chapter of faith. Samson, if you know anything about the story of Samson, you got to go, where in the world would you ever point to Samson? I mean, Gideon looks like a hero of faith compared to Samson. Samson's a disaster. He's a disaster. Every time you see him, he's sleeping with a prostitute, and God's kind of interacting with him while he's hanging out in brothels. You go, what in the world? Samson, he makes the chapter of faith. Jephthah, God has him win a victory, and he is so happy that God let him have a victory. He makes a vow to God on the way back after the victory and says, the first thing that comes out of my house, I'm going to kill and sacrifice to you. If you come back for war, what do you expect to come out of your house to greet you? Someone in your family. Yeah, he offers his daughter. He kills his daughter as a sacrifice to God, in thanks for a great victory. Hebrews chapter 11 has Jephthah on the list of people of faith. People of faith. That's pretty generous. Isn't that generous? That's pretty generous. So let me ask you this question. How would you define faith? How would you define faith? Don't give me a synonym like belief. That's just a synonym. That's just another. How would you define belief? Like, no, like put it in a sentence without using a synonym. How would you define faith? We're going to read it in a second. Hebrews 11:6 says, because without faith, how does that verse end? It is impossible to please God. Without whatever faith is, you cannot please God. The other interesting thing that came up in Bible study about faith, which is really a mind wrecker for me a little bit, was think through the Old Testament the best you can and try to give me one story where God gives the people victory or blesses the people or blesses all of Israel because they were so good. Just try. Like, they were under the law, right? They're under the law. And the law says, if you disobey the law, if you break it at all, I have to, what? Curse you. And if you fully obey the law, if you do everything written in the book of the law, then I can bless you. So you would expect a book, the whole Old Testament, you would expect stories that would back that up. Stories where when they obey God, they get blessing, right? Oh, and then they prospered because they were so obedient. And then you would expect over here for them, when they're doing badly, to always be cursed. And I would challenge you to give me a single story in the Old Testament where, in fact, the reason God gives them a victory or a blessing is because they are so obedient to the law. Do you think you'll find a story in the Old Testament where the Jews are actually praised by God for following the law? No, not one. And yet, the author of Hebrews gives us victory story after victory story after victory story after victory story after victory story. And he says, look at the record. Look at the book in your hands. It's not a book where God is rewarding people for being good. It's always a record of rewarding people who live by faith. And he says, look at this victory. Samson gets a victory. Why? Is he obedient to the law? No, not even close. Jephthah offering his daughter, like where? Who? Abraham? There is no law, number one. And number two, he is not worthy of actual honor other than by faith. By faith. It's an amazing concept. It kind of wrecks the whole idea that you can, if you want blessing from God, be obedient. Because there's all kinds of blessing in the Old Testament. And no obedience. Strange. Right? It's a pretty cool idea. It's a pretty amazing idea, really. That God is responding to our hearts. Our attitudes towards him. That's how God is responding. Way more like a parent who, if you have a child who is responding to you from their heart, how do you respond to them? Is that what you're looking for? It is, right? It is. That's exactly like, yeah, right. You want to draw your parent in, you want to draw your spouse back in, respond to her, respond to him from your heart. And the doors will all open up, right? This is what happens. It's what happens. It's an amazing idea. How would you define faith then? If that's the trigger, without it, you can't please God. So obedience isn't the path to please God. Faith response from here is, so how would you define it? Here's how the author of Hebrews defines it. And I'm not sure. So do you have a sentence in your head? Try to get one before I show you this one. Here's what the author of Hebrews says it is. Faith is confidence in what we hope for. It's a bright outlook of the future. Faith is confidence in the future, right? And an assurance about what's not here yet, right? Right? Is that what it says? It is what it says, right? It's a confidence. It's a attitude. It's a thing from the heart that says something like, it's going to be okay because God is on my side. It's going to be okay. I know God. It's going to work out. Why? I know God. Like, it's going to end well. I can always have hope because God's out there and he's on my side. Faith. I know the God who holds the future, and he knows me. So when it gets to the list at the end, like they were sawed in two, they were thrown into the fire, they lived in caves and holes in the ground. None of them, it says, none of them got what was promised in their lifetime. And yet the world wasn't worthy of them. They lived and died in misery, but they lived and died with confidence in what's next. Confidence in what's next. Confidence in what's next. So I'm going to show you a story in Hebrews chapter 11 that always was, always was a riddle to me. I thought the whole point of the story I'm going to show you, it's the one of Moses' mother. I always thought of it as a story that really, really, really makes faith small and easy, which is how we like it, right? That's what we like. And so I'm like, oh, there's a perfect one. Because here's the story. Listen to this. Oh, well, this is Hebrews. Same one. It says it this way. Without faith, it's impossible to please God because anyone who comes to him must believe what? That he's there and that it's going to be good because he's there. There's a reward, there's a benefit, it's going to be good later because God's there. That's faith. God, you're a good God. This is it. God, you're a good God. And you, I don't know how, I don't know when, I don't know why, but you will rescue me. You are my help. Yeah, right? Right? Simple. It's pretty simple. Like, how much faith do you have to have? Like, what is it? Oh, you have to know the whole Bible and you got to believe everything in there. No, that's not. No. You got to believe God's out there and he's on your side and he's going to reward you. Now, of course, the reward is through Christ, and we know that, right? Here's the story. And it doesn't feel like faith to me, or it never did before. And it's really a strong one of faith for me now. Now it's kind of maybe a pinnacle story in this list. But before it was kind of weak. And I always thought, well, that's good, because sometimes I feel like my faith is fairly weak. But here's what it says. By faith, Moses' parents hid him for 3 months after he was born because they saw that he was no ordinary child. Isn't that what every parent sees when they look in the crib, though? Oh, that's the most beautiful baby I've ever seen. Actually, some versions even say, because they saw that he was a beautiful child. Like, oh, I just had a kid. It was the ugliest thing on the planet. Like, it happens, but not that often. By faith, Moses' parents hid him for how long? For 3 months. Who are they hiding him from? Pharaoh and his henchmen and the law of the land. What was the law of the land? Take your baby, throw him to the alligators, right? Throw him to the alligators. Got to throw your male babies into the Nile River. Honestly, by the way, I think that's more than just feed them to the alligators. They worship the Nile, and even the alligators in there were part of the Egyptian. I think that's like bowing knee to the Egyptian gods. You'll do that. But physically it was take your baby, feed him to the alligators. Or crocodiles? I don't know. Probably crocodiles. By faith, Moses' parents hid him for 3 months after he was born because they saw he was no ordinary child and they were not afraid of the king's edict. That's the whole thing. What's the problem with that verse? What about the 4th month? How long did she have faith? 3 months. And what did she do on day 1 of month 4? Put him in the river. He ends up in the river. And I always I don't know, I'll bet every mom, hit him for a minute, his 3 months, when he was 2 and out of control, I couldn't, then the guards came and took him away. No. At 3 months, the guards don't show up and drag him away. No, at 3 months, the family over dinner just says, yeah, I think tomorrow we should put Moses in the river. It's a family decision. What is going on in your mind that you, what changed from 2 months to now the end of 3 months? Well, right? It seems like a dilemma, doesn't it? It seems like that faith, brief faith even, makes the chapter. I think that's really wonderful. That's profoundly gracious of God. But I think that's a misunderstanding of this story. So let's go to the story and read it. First, from a negative perspective again, from trying to define faith, because that's what we're trying to do. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. So be like Moses' mother and be willing to kill your children after 3 months. Then a new king, this is how Exodus opens up. Then a new king to whom Joseph meant nothing came to power. So the effect of Joseph lasts 400 years. Joseph really turned that place around. A lot of Egyptians are going to be in heaven because of Joseph. It took 400 years before an Egyptian king comes to power, a pharaoh, who could care less about Joseph and his gods. That's a pretty big impact. Then a new king to whom Joseph meant nothing came to power in Egypt. Look, he said to his people, the Israelites have become far too numerous for us. Come, we must deal shrewdly with them, or they will become even more numerous. And if war breaks out, we'll join our enemies, fight against us, and leave. We can't let them leave. So they put slave masters over them to oppress them in forced labor, and they built Pithon and Ramses as store cities for Pharaoh. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread. So the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites and worked them ruthlessly. They made their lives bitter with harsh labor and brick and mortar and with all kinds of work in the fields. In their harsh labor, the Egyptians worked them ruthlessly. Good time to be Jewish in Egypt? Nope. Terrible time. Terrible time. Easy lives? Terrible lives. All right. Terrible, terrible lives. The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, when you're helping the Hebrew women during childbirth and on the delivery stool, if you see that the baby's a boy, kill him. And if it's a girl, let her live. The midwives, however, feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them. They let the boys live. So did the midwives have faith? They did. They had hope in the future. They didn't know how. They didn't know when. They didn't know why, really. But they thought to themselves, why? Because they feared God. They had God in his proper perspective. So they did realize he lives, and they did believe he would reward the future somehow because he's a good God. And so they're like, no, we're not going to do what you say. We're going to keep hope, right? They're going to keep hope alive. Then the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, why have you done this? Why have you let the boys live? The midwives answered Pharaoh, Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women. They're vigorous and give birth before the midwives arrive. So God was kind to the midwives, even though they're liars. So God was kind to the midwives, and the people increased and became even more numerous. And because the midwives feared God, he rewarded them. Right? He rewards faith, not obedience to the law. Don't lie. Then Pharaoh gave the order to all his people, every Hebrew boy that is born, you must throw it into the Nile. So who did he empower to take the children and throw into the river? Everybody. Everybody. Now anyone can snatch your baby, check it, throw it in the river. Tough time to be alive. Tough time to be alive. What? Right? Like, what's going on? Now a man of the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, again, every parent, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it in tar and pitch. She placed the child in it and sent him into the river. So it's actually happening. It's a law that's actually happening in Egypt. So let's just think Nature Channel for a second and think of the wildebeest crossing the Nile River, yeah? So you got you've seen the scene, the wildebeest are jumping off the cliff and they're falling and tumbling in. What's down in the water? Crocodiles. How big are they? They're huge. And are they all gathered together? They are. All the crocodiles are gathered together. Why? Because it's migration season. They know what's happening. It's a feast time. This is when we're going to eat enough for all year. Because so what do you think's happening when now all of a sudden every male baby is taken to the side of the river and thrown in? What do you think's happening in the river? Do you think they're going anywhere? No, they're everywhere. Like they're coming. Why? Because it's feeding time, right? It's horrible. It's horrible. This is really, really bad. And if you take your baby, you put it in a basket, and that baby is hollering, which babies do. And in this story, the baby's crying. And all the crocodiles are here. It's feeding time. And you put him in a basket and you send him out there and he's crying. What's going to happen to that baby? It's going to get eaten. So how is that faith? Again, why wouldn't faith never put the baby in the river? Right? It's one of those things. What is Hope. How does she have hope? How does she have hope? It's actually pretty amazing. It's a pretty amazing story. This is a terrible translation. I think all the Bibles that I'm aware of do a pretty terrible translation. This right here, she got a papyrus basket. Almost every translation is going to say something like that. This word here is used only in this story, but somewhere else it's used 26 times. 26 times, but only in one other story. One story. Now, in the Old Testament, baskets, they're all over every story. There's baskets everywhere. That's not that word. That's not that word. In English, it says basket. It's not a basket. Baskets all over. They carried things in a basket. They did. It's all over. It's not that word. Only one other story is this word in, and in that story, 26 times. The story, very importantly, is before she lived, not after. If it's after, it's not relevant, right? Because then this is the first time, and then she just made a basket. But before this, there's a basket story, but not a basket. What do you think the word is? Ark. It's an ark. It's an ark. She doesn't put him in a basket. She makes an ark. 26 times. There's only one story, two stories, where the word ark is ever used in the Old Testament. There's the Ark of the Covenant. It's a different word. It's a different word, different ark. There's one kind of ark that floats on the water, and God was the one who told Moses how to make it, what it is. It's a unique thing. It's not a boat. There's lots of boats. It's not a boat. It's an ark. It's one kind of thing. It's an ark. And Moses made an ark, and then what did he do to the outside of the ark? Noah. Who am I saying? Moses. No, Moses didn't make an ark. Noah made an ark. They're all in the Old Testament. It's okay. Noah made an ark, and then after he made the ark, he covered it with pitch or tar. That's right. That's right. So we actually have a different story altogether. Altogether different. If we read, if it would say ark, she made him an ark and covered it in pitch, it might trigger the connection. The connection's there. It's unavoidable. Let's read it again. But let's read the end of it. Now a man from the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that it was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, I can no longer keep this special son alive. He's going to be caught by someone walking by. Everywhere we go, he isn't content anymore. He's now becoming his own person, and he's speaking out when he shouldn't, and someone is going to just grab him from me and throw him in the river. We can't let that happen. So we are going to believe in hope because there's a God. And what is the story that she would have of God saving people from the water? The ark. It's Noah's ark. It's the only story she has, and it's a story of God saving people from the water. That's the danger, that's literally the story. She goes, in hope, she goes, I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but I cannot just live with no hope. There is a God who literally exists, and there is a God who has done it before. He's done it before. And maybe my intuition that this is no ordinary child is right, and maybe maybe I should live in hope of that same God might see me in my situation, and he might still have the heart of a rescuer. And maybe, if I lean into that story, maybe it will touch his heart, and he will rescue my child. But I can no longer keep it safe. It will die if I stay in charge. So I'm going to have hope in the God of the future, a God who is good and saves. And to trigger God, I'm going to build an ark. And I'm going to do what Noah did, and I'm going to cover it with pitch. And I'm going to pray over it. I'm going to send it adrift and trust God with the future and life and death. Right? That's actually a lot of faith. That's actually a lot of faith. And it's faith in what she knows about God and the story she could know. And the text isn't ashamed to say that's what she's doing, because it takes the word out of that story and says this, right? Moses is writing this. How cool is that? God tells him the story, right? He's the author of Genesis, so God tells him the story, and I told Noah to build an ark, and then he did this and he did that, and I saved the world, and I made a promise. And then your mom, when you were born, instead of letting you die, she built an ark, and she put the future hope of life and deliverance and freedom into the ark, trusting the same God, trusting me, that I would see you in an ark and that I would want to save you. That's who you are to me, Moses. That's who your mom is. That's your lineage. That's faith. That's faith. That's not just giving up after 3 months. That's actually really strong. Like, no, I'm going to base my life and decisions on the stories that I know God through. And I'm going to do the same thing, right? Isn't that cool? I think that's amazing. And then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile, among the crocodiles. Like, yes, it's dangerous waters out there. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen. How horrific is that? The chances of him getting eaten are real. Like, I shouldn't have stayed. But why would she stay? Why would she stay? Is it faith to stay? It is faith. Because there's a chance. Why? Because we put him in an ark. And we're trusting the God who responds by faith, responds to faith. And here we are, living by faith. And there's a chance. Maybe God is going to come through. Because there's a chance, because that's who God is. There's a chance that he's not going to get eaten. And like something, I don't know what could possibly happen. The worst possible thing begins to happen. The worst possible thing. Pharaoh's daughter and Egyptians go to the river right there where they chose to put the baby. Like that's not good, but it might be good, but it shouldn't be good. Why? They're Egyptians, and it's Pharaoh's daughter. She's not going to break the rules like this. Like, oh man, this is going to be trial. I should leave. This is going to be horrible. I can't leave because maybe that's faith, hope in the future. There's a possibility because God is good and God's on my side and he's a God who saves. So she stays. Then Pharaoh's daughter went to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. Oh, this is bad. It's also a terrible place to take a bath. Like, who's getting in that river? Who's getting in the river? Like, when you complain about your life and you can get in a bathtub or a shower, remember that Pharaoh's daughter went to bathe where all the crocodiles got fed. This is crazy. We have it pretty good. Pharaoh's daughter went down to the river to bathe, and her attendants were walking with her. She saw the basket among the reeds. Oh no. She sent her female slave to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, right? He's making noise. Stop wiggling like you're attracting crocodiles. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. This is one of the Hebrew babies, she said. Then his sister asked, she calls out, maybe this is it. Maybe God did hear us. Maybe God is right, alive and well. Hey, you found a Hebrew baby? Do you want me to get someone who happens to be ready to nurse that baby? It's pretty amazing. God's going to give the baby Moses right back to his mother with Pharaoh's permission to raise it. God rewards those with faith. That's right there. It's not little faith. It's kind of little, but it's just hope by a thread in the future. Hope in the future. By a thread, maybe, that's faith. Why? The future could work out. Why? Because God is real. God saves. God's on my side. I'm hopeful. And I'm not going to not be hopeful. Shall I go get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you? Yes, go, she answered. So the girl went and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you as well. That worked out pretty well. How do you think the next meal went at the Moses house? Pretty good, right? Pretty good. His name's not Moses yet, by the way. Moses isn't his given name. We don't know his given name, I don't think. She named him Moses, saying, what does she say? I drew him out of the water. And then it's going to go on to say, that he becomes the son of Pharaoh. Yeah, son of Pharaoh. So by faith, Moses' mother puts him in the water in an ark, trusting the God who has done it before to do it for me. And God says, yeah, that's what I love. That's what I absolutely love. And then when Moses is found, this is super important, when Moses is found, he's drawn out of the water, and when he's taken out of the water, right in the text, he's named and declared to be the son of Pharaoh. I drew him out of the water, and you will be the son of Pharaoh. Yeah? We know God loves this story because when Jesus comes, this is what God does for Jesus. And it's not a mystery why Jesus gets baptized. God is saying, yes, I respond to faith, and I want to say that so loudly that I'm going to have the deliverer, the second deliverer, go through the same steps as the first deliverer, Moses, yes? So Jesus goes down to the water, and as Jesus is coming out of the water, God speaks and declares Jesus to be a son as well, right? So it's the exact same thing. Jesus into the water, rescued out of the water, and as Jesus comes out of the water, It is not Pharaoh's daughter who pronounces that he is her son. It is God the Father who speaks from heaven and says, "You are my son. You're my son." And we have a story of faith from Noah through Moses' mother to Christ, from the first world deliverance to the second deliverance to the final deliverance. And it's all by faith. And it's all simple faith. And that's hope in the future, because God exists and God is good and he's on our side. And she will give birth to a son, and you will name him Jesus, or Yeshua, because Jesus in Greek, it doesn't translate, but Yeshua in Hebrew is God's here to save you, right? God saves. And that's, so we go, Jesus don't make sense. So she will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins. And how will he do it? By faith, of course. Of course. And what is that faith? It's going to be okay, because God exists. God is on my side, and God saves. So I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. And I'm going to be okay because ultimately there's Christmas. And God would send his son to save you and your children through faith. Let's pray.